You're listening to Behind the Red Shield, a podcast produced by the Salvation Army of Memphis and the Mid-South. I'm your host, Camille Connor. The purpose of this podcast is to go behind the scenes and hear from the people doing the daily work to achieve the Salvation Army's mission, which is to meet human needs in His name without discrimination. In this episode, I talked with Memphis Area Commander Major Lorie Hunter. We went back in time to discuss when she first became involved in the Salvation Army as a child. And we talked about some of the programs she leads in the Memphis area, including the Angel Tree program, which provides Christmas gifts to thousands of children and seniors in our community. Let's get into the episode. I'm joined right now by Memphis Area Commander Major Lorie Hunter. Thank you for joining us today. And so, of course, the purpose of this podcast is to highlight the resources and services that the Salvation Army of Memphis provides, but also to shine a light behind the Red Shield towards the people who make the Salvation Army's mission happen. So before we jump into all the work that you do for the Salvation Army and, of course, Memphis, I want to talk about, I want to rewind a bit and talk about when you were first introduced to the Salvation Army. When did that moment happen?
Well, thank you for having me. I believe it started when I was about 6. I was one of those kids that got picked up on the bus. I had a neighbor who I went to school with that invited me to a Salvation Army youth program. So that's kind of how I got connected. I was connected until I was about 13, and I moved a little further out, so I was not as connected. And then after I was married, my husband and I started going back. We were probably 22, 23 when we started reconnecting ourselves to the Salvation Army. But I started at about 6.
Wow. And so for those who don't know, many officers in the Salvation Army are married, and you guys have moved up to the point where you're area commanders, as I said, here in Memphis, and your titles are Major. You're married to Major Mark Hunter, and you guys got here to the Memphis Area Command last year, so you've been here for a little over a year, right? So can you tell us about that transition of you and Major Mark, starting to be involved when you guys were in your 20s and starting to be involved in the ministry of the Salvation Army all the way to this point now where you're our leaders here. Can you talk about that transition?
We were probably in our mid to early 20s. We went back as a young family. We had our daughter at the time. And that was the connection we made. We were soldiers. We were not officers. We were just part of the congregation. We were part of those individuals that met to worship at the Salvation Army. So we did that. We were leaders at our local Salvation Army. We led the young people. We led Sunday school. We were just part of that local leadership. And after about 10, 12 years, we felt a calling that, God's calling us to full-time ministry. We both had full-time jobs. In fact, after about 7 or 8 years, I began working for the Salvation Army just as an employee, and I did that for 8 years before we went into the College for Officers Training to become officers. And my husband had worked for the same company for 15 years, so it was kind of a process for us are we really hearing God say full-time ministry? But when we opened our hearts and our minds to it, and we understood that, yes, that was exactly what God was calling us to do, then we kind of moved forward with that. But we were local leaders for about 12 years before we ever became officers.
Yeah. And, I also want to talk about what was it with the Salvation Army that made you all want to stay with it and involve your children into it? Why, you can choose many churches, right? Many organizations. So what was it about the Salvation Army that made you guys want to continue sticking with it and raising your family in this organization?
I think it's the people. I think God has just a way of working through the Salvation Army to reach people. I love the fact that I am that conduit between those in the community that are able to help and to be a support and to lead the community, and the people who need help, who are also part of the community but struggle, whether it's financially or emotionally or just with knowledge on how to raise their kids. I just love being that middle person, that go-between, to be able to do both, to interact with both and to minister to both. But I just have always, let's redo that. Mm-hmm. I have always felt God's calling on my life to serve the underserved, to work with the people that maybe society has said, we don't accept you the way that they should be. I've always felt that I was maybe even a part of that. I love to consider everybody that we work with as my people. Those are my people. Those are God's people, and I want to love those people the same way that God loves those people. The same way that God loves me, I want to love them. 1 John 4:19 says, I love because he first loved me. And when I accepted God's love for me, that meant I was charged to go love other people. And in my eyes, those that need love are the underserved, or the ones in our shelter, the ones that are struggling to provide for their children. Those are God's people.
Yeah. And as an area commander, you guys spend your time, keeping tabs on everything that's happening in this area. So you spend time at the Purdue Center of Hope, which is our women's shelter. You spend time at the Kroc Center, which is our community center. And can you tell me what it's like to manage those places as well as minister to the people who are seeking service in those places?
Well, it's hard because it's a lot of work. We do work hard, but it is all about the people. It's about surrounding ourselves with people that can come alongside us and join in that ministry. Perfect examples of that is Lieutenant Lorie, and her area of ministry is at the Purdue Center. She does such a good job of ministering to the people there in the Purdue Center. And then we have Major Ray Jackson and Captain Shalonda Jackson. Their area of ministry is at the Kroc Center. So we can oversee the operations of the Purdue Center and oversee the operations of the Kroc Center and rely on them to do that important ministry work with the people that are there. But it all boils down to people, having the right staff in place, the right officers in place, and just knowing that we have a part to play in that.
Yes. And can you also talk about some of the other locations where you guys have been officers, and talk about what it's like to have to start to understand the needs of that specific community?
Right. We served 10 years in North and South Carolina. We had 6 appointments in North and South Carolina over those 10 years. Then we served 4 years in Mississippi, where we were divisional staff at the Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi Division. We were there 4 years, and then of course we've been here for a year. When we were in the Carolinas, we were Corps officers. We had a church, the Salvation Army Church, that we did everything that we would do as a church. We would preach, we would do Sunday school, we would do Bible studies, we would care for our congregants just like any other pastor would, but we also ran shelters. We also had to fundraise to support our programs in that. We have, in our last Corps appointment as Corps officers, we also had a Catherine Booth Garden Apartments that we overseen, and that was 82 apartments for seniors that we oversaw the complex, the staffing, and of course were responsible for the ministry that took place there. But we've done a little bit of everything. Every community that we've been in looks different. The Salvation Army responsibilities in that community were different. It was based on what the needs were in that local community. Here in this community in Memphis, it's really big in sheltering. A huge shelter here with women and children and all the wraparound services. It's just so beautiful to come in and see. I've never seen anything like it just here, just the way it functions and the way we can wrap around these women and these women with children and give them every opportunity that they need to succeed. And then in other places, it's just been different. It's been, whether it's the senior housing or it's just been a big presence in a community for food and clothing. So whatever the needs are in the community, that's where the Salvation Army steps in and says, this is where we can help. This is our part in making this community better.
Yeah, and I want to dive deeper into, the ministry aspect. You guys hold chapel as well as, take out our mobile canteen throughout the city to serve and feed people who are unhoused. But, what is it like building those relationships with people, whether they're in chapel or staying at our shelters, or someone that you meet while you're out on an outing in the mobile canteen? How do you go about building those relationships outside of these walls?
Well, I don't think it's easy. I don't think it's you walk up to someone and you immediately have a relationship. Those relationships are built. In a way, especially when we're out on the canteen, you run into the same people. We go out once every 2 weeks, and when you've seen that person 10 times or 12 times or 20 times, that's when you start building relationships with them, that they can trust you and know that you're not just there to give them a bag of lunch, that you really care about them. That I think it takes time and investing in that. And then ultimately it all boils down to love. I mean, I'm not out there to say, here, let me take my picture with you so that I can prove that I'm out here doing this. I'm here because I love those people, and if I'm out there handing you a sandwich and a cold bottle of water, it's because I love you, and I want you to recognize that's why I'm there, not for self-motivation or lifting me up, but to show that Christ loves you. And if that's what they get from it, that's all I need, is to know that they feel loved by Christ, to be out there. And it's the same way when you build shelter relationships with the women in our shelter. You can't just spend 5 minutes with them and assume that you've built that relationship. I know Lieutenant Roddy does a wonderful job building those relationships with these ladies, because she's there for everything with them, through the good, through the bad. She's meeting with their children. She's helping them if they have an issue with school. She will be there with them for that. If there's death, if there's loss, she's there for them. She's there even after they move out from our shelter and they've got good footing. She's there to just walk alongside of them through life beyond these walls. That's how you build relationships. And that's where we get them to a point that we can speak into their life, or that God can speak into their life through us after you've built those relationships.
We'd like to take a brief moment to tell our listeners about our annual Red Kettle Kickoff Concert. This year's concert will be on November 13th at 5 p.m. at the Kroc Community Center. Join us as we launch our Red Kettle campaign to raise funds for families in need. Get into the holiday spirit with musical performances from Stax Music Academy and experience the work of award-winning speed painter Jessica Haas as she creates an original piece live. Guests will also be welcome to refreshments following the concert, and they'll get a chance to bid on Jessica Haas's paintings. Guests are also encouraged to bring a new toy with them that will go towards our Angel Tree program, which provides gifts for hardworking families facing financial hardships. You can find more info and RSVP to our Red Kettle Kickoff concert at salvationarmymemphis.org. Let's get back to the episode. And, if people didn't already know, now they know. There's so many working parts, so many services that we are offering to this community all year round. But what most people probably do know is some of the things we do during Christmas time. So that's me segueing to Christmas. And we're in a period
It's only September and we're already in Christmas.
We're in a period of time where it's getting really busy for us. One of, I guess you could call it, programs that you are leading is Angel Tree. So if someone's never heard of Angel Tree before, could you describe what Angel Tree is?
Well, it starts with families coming to us saying, I need help providing for my child or my children for Christmas. And we do an application. They come to us, they bring the documentation they need. We take an application and we put them into our system. We do that for children and for seniors 65 and older. And then once the applications are done, we'll do that for a week. And then once applications are done, we will have up to 5,000 angels or children or seniors that we will send out to the community and say, hey, we've got these angels and we need your help to provide for these for Christmas. And so the mother that comes in with 2 children, a boy and a girl, we would take their information, and let's say their daughter's name is Susan. Susan's name and her sizes and her wish list would be put on a document. Same thing for her son. His name, his size, his clothing size, and his wish list would be put on a document. And then we would encourage the community, whether it's through going online and adopting an angel online. A lot of organizations will come to us and say, we want to help buy Christmas for 50 children. And so we would give them 50 angels. That's kind of how we refer to them once they're in our system for helping with Christmas. And then the process is they would take those children's information, buy the gifts that they would like to have, return them to a warehouse that we have set up, and then we will in turn distribute those to the families. The families would come to us, usually the week before Christmas, and pick those gifts up for their children. So that's kind of how the Angel Tree program would work. And it's the same thing for seniors. We would take the seniors' information, their wish list, and maybe there's organizations that would say, we want to adopt 15 seniors. So we would have their information and provide it to that organization or to an individual. We offer it online, that you could go onto our website and choose. You could see the names and the wish lists of the children and seniors, and you could just click and say, I want to purchase gifts for that particular angel. And then ultimately it comes down to us getting it to the families for Christmas. And it's a big undertaking. Last year we helped 5,070 angels. This year we have not taken applications yet. We will do that in just a few weeks, and then we will know exactly how many we'll be helping this year.
Yeah, and I mean, several Salvation Army locations participate in Angel Tree. What is the purpose of Angel Tree? What's the goal with this process?
Well, I think the goal, it would be the same as anything that we do within the Salvation Army, and it's meet human need. And we see that need being through gifts for our children at Christmas, but it's also a way to say, hey, God loves you. God loves you enough to be able to provide this for you through your community. It's the community coming together to show these families that we care about you. We care about your children. We care about whether or not on Christmas morning your child wakes up and has something under the Christmas tree. We care about the seniors who may be struggling just for the everyday things that they need, much less the gifts that they would like to have for Christmas or their needs that we try to meet during Christmas. It's a way of showing God's love and to meet that human need.
Yeah, and it is a huge undertaking. I mean, thousands and thousands of people getting gifts for this period of time. But, I also want to ask about when it's all said and done, when it comes to distribution day, what is it like to see those bags of gifts go out?
Oh gosh, it is beautiful. It is beautiful because there's so much work that goes into it, not just myself and my staff, but in the community. The churches that adopt 20 angels, there's a process to get those congregants to buy those gifts, to get them returned, to get them to us. It's a whole community coming together, and it's almost like the end of the story. It's done. Now these parents have those gifts, but the best part of the story is the handing of those gifts to the parents, because we don't hand them to the children. We want the children to think that Santa or their parents have provided that, and that's okay with us. But when we hand those gifts to the parents, when they cry, when it's like, oh my gosh, that you did this for me, or I can't believe my kids are going to get this, or, and it's just that's a beautiful moment. I don't know that it could be any better if I did watch the kids open the gifts, because to see those moms who thought their children were not going to get anything, all of a sudden just being blessed. I tell people when they come and they fill out an application with us, and I'll kid with them and I'll say, when you come back to pick your gifts up, make sure your car is cleaned out, make sure every spot in your car is empty, because God's going to bless you big. And when you come back to get your toys for your children, He's going to bless you big. So make lots of room in your car, because that's the way they feel. And it may not be anything huge, but to them it's big. It's a big blessing to watch God work in the lives of those people.
Yeah. And this is going to be my first year being involved, so I'm excited to see that process and see everyone receive those gifts. But we are nearing the end of our time. So I also want to ask, how do you feel about the fact that you have been involved in the Salvation Army so long? I mean, how has it blessed your life personally? I know we talked about being a blessing to other people, but how has it blessed your life and blessed your family's lives?
The most important thing for me is I live a thankful life. I'm thankful for the health of my children, because I see so many families that have just major health issues with their children. I'm just thankful for my family, my children, my every little thing, just having to get up early, but at least God's providing, or car trouble, but at least I can have it fixed, and just living a thankful life.
It gives you perspective.
It does. It gives me great perspective, but also anybody can end up in those situations. Anybody can end up struggling to feed their family. Anybody can end up just in a bad way that you need help, and just so thankful to be able to provide help in a lot of situations, and that we're able to just keep going and just be a blessing. So it's exciting.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Major Lorie. Thank you for all the work you do, and thank you all for listening to the Behind the Red Shield podcast. If you'd like to learn more about the Salvation Army of Memphis and the Mid-South, you can head to our website at salvationarmymemphis.org. There, you'll also find ways to get involved. We have several volunteer opportunities this holiday season, and you can sign up to be an Angel Tree volunteer or a bell ringer for our Red Kettle campaign. All the info is on our volunteer page. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Salvation Army Memphis. Don't forget to join us next week for a brand new episode. You can find it by subscribing to our Salvation Army Memphis YouTube page, or subscribing to Behind the Red Shield on iTunes Podcast or Spotify. Thanks for listening.